Welcome to the San Mateo Arboretum Society's Zoom seminar, Houseplant Basics. It will last approximately 60 to 90 minutes and be recorded. Following the presentation will be a question and answer session. Submit questions during the presentation by clicking on the chat box icon. A few days after the presentation, you will be emailed a link to the recording and to an evaluation form to provide feedback. Before we start, a little information about what is happening at the Arboretum Society. Our nursery in San Mateo Central Park is open Saturdays and Sundays, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Enter the north gate. Payment is by credit or debit card, Apple or Google Pay. No cash is accepted. While you're in Central Park, visit the Rose Garden, Butterfly Hummingbird, and our Sun and Shade demonstration gardens. All are maintained by the Arboretum Society volunteers. San Mateo Central Park is celebrating its 100th anniversary. The Arboretum Society has put together an exhibit featuring the past from 1922 to the present and the future. The exhibit is open from September 15th to October 30th. Visit from 4 to 6 p.m. on Thursdays and 12 to 4 p.m. on weekends at the Arboretum Society. Today, we welcome Master Gardeners Cynthia Nations and Cindi Morris to help us take better care of our houseplants. Welcome, Cindi and Cynthia.
Hey, Cynthia, I'm Cindi. It gets very confusing.
First slide.
If I can get out of the way.
So welcome everybody. This is our first session of Houseplant Basics. We're very pleased to have this collaboration and partnership with the San Mateo Arboretum. And I'll tell you a little bit about Master Gardeners before we begin. Actually, if you're interested, somebody in the audience was asking me earlier, if you're interested in applying for Master Gardeners, our next training class will be in 2024. But the announcement will go out next, probably around August or September to apply. And so what our mission is we extend research-based knowledge and information about home horticulture, pest management, and sustainable landscape practices. And now houseplants as well. So we've added houseplants to our repertoire of all the things that we present and share with the public. So before we begin, we have beautiful photos in this presentation, and I want to thank all of the UC Master Gardeners who contributed their houseplant photos. I just sent out a message and I got tons of photos, and they're all so beautiful. This is the basic course, so we won't be answering questions about specific houseplants unless you have a burning question. We will be having subsequent sessions, and one will be on the different houseplant families. All right, so our learning goals today. We're going to wait for the slide.
We're going to take questions at the end unless the chat room person feels it's pertinent to the question. So.
Right, so as we're starting, I'd like to just go over the learning goals. And what I'd like our audience. Okay, all right. So our learning goals today, I'd like for you all to go over these. And as we're going through the presentation, I'd like for you all to think about one or two takeaways. At the end, we might be asking you what one or two things you might have learned today. So be thinking about that as we're going through your interest in houseplant. There's been a surge of interest. What you have to do before you decide to buy houseplants. I know that we have one member of the audience who she doesn't have any houseplants, so this is good. Purchasing, what you have to think about for your indoor plant culture. What you look for when you're shopping, when you bring your houseplants home, fertilizing the nutrients, the pests and diseases you might encounter, maintenance. So I hope that you all keep all of those things in mind as you decide and enjoy your houseplants. They just do bring a lot of joy. We're having a few technical difficulties, sorry. So first, I'll just go ahead. We're going to talk about why people want houseplants. I'll just go ahead and while he gets the PowerPoint up. Why is there such a surge, a big surge in interest in houseplants? If you notice, if you go to some of the big box stores, you're going to be seeing a lot more houseplants. Have you all noticed that? There's a big fiddle leaf fig in the corner, and I noticed one box store had really 50 of them when I went one day. So there is a surge and an interest in houseplants. So how many of you all have stayed home during the COVID pandemic and now you're still working at home? So what we need to do is, you know, I think as we have been staying home, I know for 2 years, people have wanted to bring the outdoors in and create a better environment in our homes. And one of the things that has happened is we want to care for a living object. We have more time to be at home and we're there. We're not spending time commuting. So, and also if you bring houseplants, I know that you see them in offices, you see them in hospitals. You're creating a more tranquil environment when you have houseplants in your home. So research has shown that we've looked up, it provides a lot of, you're bringing nature indoors and it provides health and wellness. It reduces your stress levels. Air quality has been researched, it's still being researched, and it brings out your creativity and your motivation and your general happiness. Even though we might not be aware of it, I know that I'm surrounded by houseplants in my space, and I'm just makes me happy. So and so actually I've gone over this, the actual research, and you will see this in our references. Lowers the blood pressure and stress levels. Probably I need to lower my blood pressure. I don't know about you all. Enhances the immune system, lowers anxiety, and improves your mood. So Cindi is going to now talk about the considerations you have to think about before you purchase your houseplants.
Thanks for coming today. We all have in our homes, and I'm sure you've all done this before. I have a space in that corner and I think I need a house plant there. So you go down and you look for the house plant, but you don't consider what that space is, how much light it is, or anything else. So there are some things you need to consider before buying a house plant. And they are light, temperature, the humidity of your home, how you're going to water, and your soil. So next slide, please. Oops, sorry. The most important thing about growing houseplants is light. If you don't have the correct light, your houseplant will not be happy. You will not have a happy houseplant. Intensity is probably the most important. So intensity creates food synthesis, stem and leaf color, and flowering. So without light, and you know, a good example of this is orchids. How many of you have orchids at home that don't bloom? Because they're not getting enough light. They need a lot of light. So to be successful, you need light. Intensity is the brightness of light. I think we can change the slide. The intensity of the light is how close the plant is to the light source. So in the case of home, it would be the window. So the window's here and the plant's here, that's high intensity if the light coming through the window is intense. The farther back it goes, the less intense it is. And this is a little chart. Imagine setting a candle at a distance of 1 foot from a flat wall that we've drawn a square shape measuring 1 square foot. 1 lumen per square foot will illustrate this space. So that's showing you how much foot candles there is in a foot. A little complicated. I have a light meter that I like. I got it online and it measures foot candles. So when I want to put something somewhere, I could take it and we'll do the foot candles in this room. I turn it on and then I hit foot candles. And this foot candle, this room is about 35 foot candles. And if we could change the slide. So 35 foot candles is low. Most homes are medium. That's a good west window. And of course, the sun changes every season. Your sun is much higher in the summer and lower in the winter. So that's going to come in different in your window and it's going to be a different intensity. So you might have to move it in the winter. And of course, it depends on what kind of plant you're growing. Some plants don't like a lot of light intensity and others love it. And then there's obstacles. There's trees that grow, your neighbor's remodel, curtains, overhangs, and that changes your light source. Okay, next slide, please. Light duration is another factor in light. Sensitive flowering plants are sensitive to light duration. This would be our orchids. So they need a certain amount of time in the light to bloom. Whoops. Let's see what I have here. The light received in a 24-hour period is light duration. So intensity is how close it is to the window. Duration is how much light is in your room. I have a southwest living room, very intense next to the west window, but I don't want to grow there. I want to grow on my fireplace. I want to put a plant stand in a plant. So I have to make sure that that plant gets many hours of light in the room, which it does. It's not intense, but there's light in the room. That's duration. Let's see. Oh, she changed it before I'm ready. Okay, let's move on. Temperature. Temperature is linked to photosynthesis. Very important. Our plants need light is what enables the plant to photosynthesize. If it doesn't photosynthesize, it starves to death. That's what makes the food for the roots to take up and feed the rest of the plants. We want our plants to be at 58 to 72 degrees a day, and it wants to be a little cooler at night, of course, because the plant's resting. It's like us. It doesn't work all day and all night. It rests and recuperates. Temperature also affects respiration and transpiration. And the plant produces food during photosynthesis. Next slide, please. Humidity. Wow, our houses aren't humid. Our houses are pretty dry, especially in the winter when we have the heat on. And these plants, almost all of them come from the tropics. where it's humid and wet and moist, and they love it. They're very supple, and so then they come to our home. Ooh, what a surprise, huh? So you want your humidity to be over 50% is high. So low is 20%, medium 40 to 50%, high is 50% or more. So you want to do your best to get as much humidity in the house, in the room as possible. You can group plants together. That helps with humidity. You can use a humidifier, or you can spray the leaves, or you can set rocks under the watering dish, in the watering dish, and set the plant on top of it. And that will create some humidity. When you go into a nursery, has anyone, I know you've all been in a nursery, and you walk in and it's like, whoa, that smell and that humidity is like fantastic. That's because there's a lot of plants in there, and it's hot and humid, and they're transpiring. They're releasing vapors, water vapors, and oxygen. So of course, in our home, we don't have that, but that's a good illustration of what humidity can do. Next slide, please. Number one cause of houseplant death is by watering. I used to work in a nursery, and people would bring their orchids in to me. I don't know what's wrong with this orchid. It's just limp, and I keep watering it, it won't perk up. So what I used to do was take a piece of newspaper and spread it out, dump the plant out, and show them there's no roots because you've rotted them because you've overwatered them. Oh, so if there's no roots, you can't take up water, can't take up anything. So the plant dies. So you only want to water when it's dry, unless you have ferns or something that likes to be wet all the time. 1.5 to ½ inch. If you put your finger in, it's dry, then water. And use a long neck watering can like this, and pour it into the roots of the plant. A lot of plants don't like their leaves getting wet. African violets, peperonias. This plant would not like its roots getting wet. So you have, when you water too much, the water fills up the air spaces in the soil. So in the soil, there's air spaces, which we're going to talk about in a minute. The water fills up those spaces, and the plant literally suffocates. It can't breathe. It needs air around the roots. Air, and then the nutrients are released, and the roots can take them up. But if you're drowning them in water, then no air circulation. Drainage holes, of course, and my friend Cynthia made this cute little giraffe here, and she drilled some hole for water. Then you have holes for watering, or so the water can drain through. Really, really important. And that helps with the root rot. Next slide. Chlorine damages our leaves. Not all plants, but there are some plants that will be damaged from the chlorine in our water. Use humic acid. It improves microbial growth. Does everyone know what microbial growth is? No. Microbial growth is the growth under the ground. It's the good stuff that lives in the soil. The microbes in the soil, they're little tiny things that wiggle around, and they're good. They're worms, they're all kinds of things. And they the nutrients that come into the soil, these guys eat and they poop out, and then the roots can take them up. So this helps improve that. Improves water retention, decreases toxin levels in mix, improves nutrients, absorption rate of plants. Or you can let your watering can sit overnight, and that should get rid of most chlorine. Okay. And then the last thing. Okay, so an overwatered plant, new and old leaves fall off at the same time. Leaves turn brown, yellow, wilting. Moldy leaves, stems, flowers, root tips turn brown. Root rot, foul odor, gray or slimy roots. Overwatered is wilting. We had someone today brought a plant in and it was just so wilted, it was just pathetic. So it needed water. But wilting can be two things, overwatered or underwatered, depending on the circumstance. Next slide. Soil. A houseplant growing media is I don't know, it's not soilless. Is a combination of bark, forest material, sphagnum moss, vermiculite, and perlite. You want a nice, loose, rich, loomy soil so that those air pockets can form around your plants and your plant can breathe. And your mix should smell like the forest floor. Should smell good. Potting mix absorbs water and minerals, provides anchorage, provides air pockets, good quality for plants growth and health. Acidic mix recommended. Okay. Your soil should be at least 70% acidic. Why? First of all, these things grow in acidic soil in nature. Second, the nutrients will not be released in the soil unless the soil is 70% acidic for these plants. So the roots cannot take up the nutrients that you give it or that it is in the soil. So make sure when you buy soil for your house plant, you're buying an acidic soil, or that when you use fertilizer, it's an acidic fertilizer. Okay, that's all I have.
So how many of you all have caught the houseplant bug? And so one warning is to not be caught in the wonderfulness of it all. How many of you have like gone and you think, oh, I'm going to get this thing, and then you bring it home and you don't know what you're going to do with it or where you're going to plant it or whatever we do. We just love the plant all of a sudden. And also another thing, when you're in a nursery, make sure that you are aware that not every houseplant is totally free from pest or disease or bugs when it's in the big box store or the nursery. I remember one time a colleague and I went to a store actually as we were preparing this presentation, and we wanted to look at all the houseplants and get a feel of it. And this nursery had a very good reputation, but on closer look, it wasn't, a lot of those plants were not that great. It did have little mites, little discoloring, yellow leaves, things like that. So just beware of things that you're going on when you're shopping. Also, houseplants can be expensive. I have this one picture of this Hoya. It's called Hoya compacta or carnosa. If you can imagine, it was $6,500. That's not for me, for sure. I probably am on the less expensive side, let's say. I think that the most expensive houseplant I ever purchased was $70, and it was 3 leaves, but it was also a Hoya. And it was one of those heart-shaped, variegated Hoya leaves. I think it's called Hoya Harmsey. And it was, it now has 7 leaves, and it brings me joy every day, this little plant. So it was worth my $70, but usually I really do try to, keep it down. And also propagation. You can find friends. As a matter of fact, I probably will be, when we take this plant apart in a minute, I can see 3 little plantlets there, and I will probably, actually a money tree is called the sharing plant. So all of these little plantlets grow. So, ask friends. If you can take a clipping, you can do that, especially with succulents. So think about the budget and think about the time, each plant needs, as you're trying to care for plants, and how much time you might have to care for plants, because some plants take a little bit longer than others. I know that I mentioned that fiddle leaf fig around the corner here. And I know that I do miss that every now and then. And, misting is a little bit extra work for me, but I have a great little mister that doesn't get all over the wall, and all of that. So yeah, think about the water, the air, the sunlight, the fertilizer, and also pest management. And you know what? Plant labels on plants are so important. I couldn't tell you how we all need to, especially like out in the garden and in houseplants, how big is it going to grow? And it will tell you the common and scientific name. A lot of times, well, I must say that I have been a little lax in it, but I have a database, and I have it for houseplants, and I have it for my edibles, and I have it for my outdoor plants. I have a lot of succulents in my yard. And what I do is all of this information. I have the common name, I have the genus and species name on it as well. But I also, what is so important in the light requirements, Cindi talked about foot candles of light. You need to know light requirements. It's so important. Also the water requirements. We talk about water. I can tell you that most of my plants, I just don't water that often. The more common ones, I water once a week, but I have something called a ZZ plant. Anybody familiar with ZZ plant? It takes low light and so little water that I only water it probably once every 2, even 2.5 weeks. So Zamioculcas zamifolia is called a ZZ, but ZZ is real easy to remember. All right, the mature height and spread. You don't want to have something that is going to overpower. I know that I've had huge plants. Some of your plants, you might get it, for instance, at a store, and it's a nice little 6-inch plant. And then the next thing you know, the next year, it's like, overpowering where you wanted to put it. So make sure that, make sure you know where it is. Actually, I can just tell you, as a master gardener in your yard, when you're redoing your yard, you have seen people who have everything that looks so close together. When we're having these gardens that we're planting and it looks so close together, it's better to have them farther apart and know what they are going to be at maturity. So, all right, houseplant toxicity and pets. Make sure if you have small children. I know my granddaughter just got a new puppy, and we've had to move a lot of the plants out of range. The puppy, and we had to take all the euphorbia outside. We actually pulled all the euphorbia because it's highly toxic in the yard. So make sure you do the same thing with your indoor houseplants, or you raise them up high, or you do something. Some houseplants, you can see some of these, which I was very surprised about the pothos. Pothos is so popular, but it is, highly toxic to dogs, to humans, and to cats. And you know how cats love to, unless you have those little sticks inside the soil, you know how cats like to sit there and do their business. So yeah, you've got to be sure that it could cause a lot of problems. Some people are highly allergic, they're susceptible, they might even touch the plant and they have an allergic reaction. And also, if you have any doubts about your baby or your children having a reaction to the plant, make sure you call the California Poison Control Center, and then they can help you. So this is an important slide. All right, plant health. What are we going to be looking for when we go shopping? I always look for strong, straight branches. I look very, very carefully. I look for those healthy leaves. They're dark green and they're a good size. The shape of the plant, because a lot of them, especially if you're buying a larger plant, it's going to be, it might be not the shape that you want it in the place where you want it. I always appreciate myself buying the smaller plants, and then I can prune it to the shape that I want it, to the spot where I'm going to put it. Also, a really good sign is new growth. When I just love, like, I know the people in the audience who have plants, it's so joyous when there's new growth and you're going to have a new bloom, or you're going to have, new little shoots coming out. So also pest free. Actually, you could actually take a loop or a magnifying glass. I know it sounds a little weird, but if you're going to go plant shopping, you can actually, take something like that, so you can get in between the leaf and the stem and maybe look for those kind of things. If, and it'll help you in case you have a doubt, because just bringing those kind of plants home, you just don't want to do it. It'll infect the whole, all of your other plants. And finally, do you love it? Do you love your plant? Do you love the plant? I know when I first saw this, it was a baby, and I love this plant, and I love peperomias in general. I have several different species of peperomias because they're easy. They grow in the light that I have available, and they're pretty carefree. So there's another one called watermelon plants. I had that at the beginning of the slide. It looks like a watermelon. The leaves are so beautiful. There's a peperomia called aluminum plant, and those are very beautiful too. So don't purchase if it's leggy like this. I would never buy this in the store. Of course, that was in my house, I must admit. A chlorotic or brown leaves, that means it's not photosynthesizing. It has yellow leaves. It's just not looking so well. So it's spindly growth, or it's wilted. All right, so important tools. I know that I've had houseplants, I don't even know how many years I've had since my children were little, and my children are now in their 40s. So I've had houseplants forever, since I was first married, I think. So I'm just going to go over some of these. First of all, Cynthia already pointed out this watering can. The watering can is just a wonderful purchase. And I always had those big round spot, those big round. I don't know why they make, there must be a reason why they make those big round watering spouts at the end, and I always took it off. But I recently, actually, it's taken me a long time to wake up, but I finally found this at a big box store. It wasn't expensive, and I love this thing because I don't get the leaves wet when I water. Also, I have 2 scoops. These scoops, like if you're planting a smaller plant, even like this, you can, plant it, get the soil, and just put it in a smaller pot. So I have kind of a larger one, and I have this one. And if I'm doing something big outside or a bigger pot, I have the regular scoop. I do a lot of succulents. So when you're repotting succulents, like if I repotted this little baby, and I accidentally got dirt in there, I would just blow it off. It just blows it off. So all of these little tools really help. Also to help take soil off of the leaves. I even use I'm paint, and so I also have a paintbrush to do that. And then of course clippers, making sure that they're clean and they're oiled. And I must admit, I cleaned and oiled this before I came here. For larger pruning, I have these wonderful shears, and I'm always sharpening them to make sure that there's a good clean cut and that it is very clean. Also the sharpener. This is like a sharpening tool. So I'm always doing this for my outdoor pruners and my indoor pruners. And then I have other little things, you can pick things up. I have tweezers. Oh, and chopsticks. I do a lot of work with succulents. So if I have a little layer of succulent soil, and then I have some sphagnum moss, I'll wet the moss, and I will make a little hole and put the propagated, like, so you can clip off succulents, and I will let it callus, dry up, and then I'll put it in the little hole. but I use the chopstick. The chopstick is very important, especially if you have little plants. So those are basically some of the houseplant tools, and you're going to maybe want a few extra pots. I have a big container of different kinds of potting soil for indoors, outdoors, and for my succulents. So as you get into this, there are other things that you might want, different potting mixes and different nutrients, which I'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so containers. You have pros and cons. It depends on our taste of what we want, what we want to do. You have a terracotta, which is very, very popular. It's excellent aeration for roots. It easily absorbs and loses moistures through the walls, and it's good for plants that like dry soil. But on the other hand, they are easily breakable and they're heavy. And I'm not into heavy pots these days, and the plants dry out faster. Plastic has its advantages. It needs watering. They're very colorful. They're lower cost, but also the sun can degrade them, which I've had done in my own yard, even in a south-facing window. And the broken black plastic is not recyclable. So you have to keep all those things in mind. Of course, ceramic. Indoors, I prefer a lot of ceramic, and I have like little things to put under them so that it'll catch the moisture. That's very important to me. The glaze on a pot, actually a lot of my ceramic is they're made from terracotta that have a glaze on them, and I really like those kind of pots, and it prevents the soil from drying out. And these good plants, they like their moist soil. Often these plants, these containers, if you've gone to some stores, I can tell you, discount stores, I'm not even actually at privilege to say different types of stores, but if you buy a plant at a discount store that has a home decor, you can get a drill. And actually, I probably am going to do this, like Cindy pointed out. I have a drill bit. Well, I have a drill with different ceramic drill bits. I never even knew this could be. And actually what you do is you put water on there, and you do this ceramic drill bit so it doesn't break. So you put water in it so it doesn't heat up and it doesn't break. So I usually try to find ceramic pots with holes, but if they don't, I know I have my handy drill. Okay, so bringing your houseplants home. Yes.
Before you bring your houseplants home, like Cynthia said, inspect it. Make sure you don't have that plant looks good. There's no bugs, and it's good to go, and you love it. Then when you take it home, make sure your car is not too hot, because you will dehydrate those plants. Because the higher the temperature, the more the plant will transpire. So if I have a little car with a hatchback, and I've done this before, I've gone to the nursery and bought my $100 worth of plants, put them in my hatchback, stopped at the grocery store, got back in the car, and was like greeted with this green smell. The plants had all dehydrated because the hatchback is very hot. I went home, I took them all, and I put them in the sink and tried to rehydrate them. Some did, some didn't. So be careful when you're transporting plants. If it's cold, you could wrap them in a blanket. Remember, these are tropical plants. One thing that always gets me is when people tell me they water their orchids with ice cubes. Oh, it works so well. It's like you're putting ice on a tropical plant. Okay, now what is wrong with this scenario? So anyway, so once you get the plant home, next slide, please. you want to clean the plant off out in the backyard if it's a big plant, because they're quite dirty. I mean, they can be quite dirty. So you want to just mist it off and get all the dirt off of it. And if you're worried about insects, bringing a new plant into your collection, you can spray it with some soap and water, and you could isolate it for a little while. So to make sure that it's nice and clean. And if you buy a plant, you probably won't do this, I hope, but if there's roots coming out of the bottom, or it looks bulgy, you might want to transplant it 1 pot size up, not into a huge thing, 1 pot size. Next slide. I'm sorry, could you go back one? Did I miss something? No, next slide, please. Sorry. Your plant is going to have to acclimate to your new home. So again, we're bringing a tropical plant into a dry environment, pretty much. So your plant might lose its leaves because it's acclimating. Let's see here. Don't be alarmed if this happens, because your plant came to you with sun leaves, because this plant came from a greenhouse where it was very hot and lots of light. And so the plant has developed what is called a sun leaf to handle the hot, humid situation. Then when you bring it home, it's going, uh-oh, we're not hot and humid anymore. I need new leaves. So it might lose its leaf. Ficuses are known for this. And it will grow what we call a shade leaf, which will fit into its new situation. And so that's what's going to might happen. So it might look a little shaky for a while, but it's acclimating. So be patient with it. Please don't place your plant by heater or an air conditioner. However, your plant does need air circulation. If the plant is away from the air conditioner a little bit, that's good air circulation, but not right on top of it. It needs air circulation because the leaves and the branches will move a little and they'll get stronger. It's like when we lift weights. So it becomes a stronger plant. Without this air circulation, it'll be a little weaker looking plant.
That's me.
That's you. Okay, I'm looking at it going, ah. I wanted to say one more thing. Sorry, Cynthia. When you bring your house plant home, as Cynthia told you, you will be putting it in a container. And I want to tell you that when you place your container in your house, there's these cork mats that your pot will stay humid. This will not be enough. The water will go right through this. So you need to raise your plant off the floor and then put the cork mat. There's all kinds of plant stands, decorative, metal, but you don't want to put your plant directly on your floor. It will, I can guarantee you, leave a black ring. I went to I used to be a plant designer for a company. I used to go to homes and decorate and design plants for the home. I went to this one woman's home and she was on the wealthy side, beautiful home. She had a housekeeper and we went in to look at the plants that the housekeeper had been taking care of. And the housekeeper took me in and she was very proud of the plant in the living room and I was looking at it. And I said, let's lift that plant up. And we lifted it up. It was on a white oriental carpet, gorgeous, just beautiful. And there it was, the ring. And I thought the housekeeper would just die right there on the spot. And the owner was like, oh, my carpet, oh, no. So that's why you have to raise it up. Make sure it's not on the ground. I think that's all. Okay. Next.
So just a word about what Cindy just said about the plants moving, they're creating their movement. You can see this plant here. We have fans, and when I first moved to California in 2012 and purchased the house and we were remodeling, I did put fans in my area, and I can always see that fan that it is rotating. You know, we like air, and I like the fan, especially the last week or so. So you can even see that this plant is getting, or sometimes if I don't have the plants on, I will shake. I will do a little shake. See how wonderful that looks? It's getting a little exercise, believe it or not. So all of these little considerations that you can think of when you have your houseplants. So the next section is houseplant fertilizing. Houseplant fertilizers, it depends on, you know, how often do you fertilize? It depends on the age of the plant, the time of year of the plant, and the growth rate of the plant. And is the plant large? Is it small? So be sure to check the labels. A lot of times I'll bring a plant home and I'll do double research. I will go online, I'll look and see, just so that I can make sure I put it in the right spot, even though I have looked at the plant tag, and that I know how much watering and fertilizing it needs. But also it has to adjust to your space as well. So you have to kind of do a combination of both. All right, so consider the plant type. When you think about houseplant nutrients and fertilizers, some plants, they're very heavy feeders, like ficus. Ficus might like a little bit more nutrients or fertilizers. And others need little or none for months. I know that I grow a lot of succulents, both indoors and out. And I actually maybe once every 6 months for those. And it's a dilute, and I'll dilution, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So also the volume of growing mix. So here, actually, this is like, it probably needs a little fertilizing. I probably put a little bit of green this C mixture that I use, but it probably will need a little bit more soon. And the light intensity, the higher the light levels, the more nutrients needed for plant growth, because it's taking in all that light, so it might need more nutrients to do its thing with photosynthesis. All right, I'm going to ask the audience to pay very close attention to this, because I might ask you a few questions after this section. So who is familiar with NPK? NPK. All right, that's interesting, because when I first, a long time ago, I had no idea what NPK is. And every time you buy any kind of fertilizer, it will have an NPK ratio on it. And so if you go back to, was it 5th or 8th grade? I don't remember when I had to memorize that chart, of the elements. The N in NPK, it's always the first letter in the ratio, and it means it's higher in nitrogen, and that is used for foliage growth, the leaves. Okay. The P means phosphorus on your chart of elements, and it's essential for flowering. So if you notice the N, you can see that the first number is higher. That means it's good for the foliage. And then the P, you can see in that ratio, it's the second one, and it means that it is really good. Phosphorus will encourage flowering. And then the potassium, which is K, which throws everybody off, even me when I was taking chemistry. Whoops, it happened. It means it's higher in potassium, and that is a strong root system and overall plant health. So that the N, okay, remember foliage, the P, phosphorus, flowering, and the potassium, strong root system and overall general health. That is that that nebulous NPK that was I've always been looking at that I didn't really know. All right, so you're going to have all kinds of different kinds of fertilizer and nutrients, liquid fertilizers that you can actually dilute with water, and you'll have to look at your plant's requirements for how much you dilute it. That is probably the most common, the ones that are liquid. You also have pills and sticks, and you also have foliar feeding. So you have just different kinds, where you do the little crystals and as you water, it'll just slowly dissolve and the plants will be. I don't actually use that kind, so I'm not familiar with the foliar feeding. Are you, Cindy? The little
ones that you put in with a lot of orchid food.
Oh, okay.
And it dissolves in the water.
Okay.
And you have to really make sure that you dilute it down.
Oh,
Very
okay.
strong.
Okay, so I usually use the liquid because it's more, to me, controllable, and I know that I'm not doing it too much. Actually, a lot of times plants will die, just like if you overwater, if you over fertilize, they will also react to over. Salt actually builds up in there if you over fertilize, and it will do damage to your plants. So the other thing that you need to look for is don't use any kind of, use more natural. Of course, we're always, you hear everybody saying use more natural kinds of fertilizers. Don't use the ones that are made. I can tell you most of it's blue, and they're not made from they're made from chemicals. And you don't want to you don't want something made, it's just like the food we eat now. We don't like to eat a lot of preservatives and all of that. It's the same thing with our plants. Don't use those blue ones. Most of them are blue, okay? So choose houseplant liquid or granular fertilizers that contain micronutrients, all right? Trace elements, vitamins, amino acids, and plant hormones. So there's a lot of things that are going in as well as the macro NPK. Those are the macro, along with actually calcium and magnesium. So a lot of it, but it's lesser, so it's not included in NPK. And so make sure that whatever, read the label and make sure it's natural. All right, so this is where I'm going to ask the audience for a little audience, participation. And also, a lot of people have asked, like, what brands, but as master gardeners, we can say a brand if we say 3. We can't recommend one brand, but we can recommend 3. So I have some good nutrients here, actually, that I know that I use, but I've also researched this. So if the NPK, I'm asking the audience now, if the NPK ratio is like Fox Farm, Happy Frog, all-purpose fertilizer, and the ratio is 6:4:5, who can tell me what that means? And I'll give you a hint. What does the 6 mean? the larger number. Okay, high in nitrogen. So in nitrogen, and that means for what benefit? Foliage. Okay. So Fox Farm Big Bloom liquid concentrate. And you can see that this one is made from bat guano and worm casting. So it's like a lesser, it's a 7/10, it's a 5/10. So if it's 7/10, what does that mean? Okay, it's good NPK, it's for roots and general overall plant health. All right, and if you use Max C, I use Max C quite often, and it's like across the board. All right, so that means that it will benefit everything. All right, I use that a lot too, indoors and out. And another one I use is Dr. Earth Organic, Dr. Earth Organic and Natural, and it's 6:4:6:5. What is the 6? High in phosphorus, which means flowering. Okay, so now you know NPK, the big mystery. Okay. I never did pay attention to that. I've known about that for about 10 years. So that's amazing to me. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about pest disease and other challenges. Would you like to join me, Cindy? We're going to talk about pest disease and other challenges.
Oh, boy.
All right. So your houseplants might show symptoms of weakness, insect pests flying. Some of them are furry, some of them are stationary. Hidden pests and diseases, also bacteria, molds, fungus, root rot, all of these things when we're not exactly, if we're overwatering, underwatering, all of that. So just make sure that we know what the particular plant needs, actually what the home of origin is. Is it, like what she said, tropical plants? Where does it come from? Maybe some of them from South America, desert, whatever it is. And that we're looking at the light, the water, the humidity, the drainage, everything that we've been talking about, soil, food, the air around the soil, and the hygiene.
Yeah, and if you don't pay attention to this and your plant is weakened, it will be it will be more likely to get insect infestation. So if you have a good, healthy plant, your chances of insects or virus or whatever are much less.
So what in the world has gone awry with these different pests? And these are the most common pests. How many of you have had some of these pests?
We've all had them.
We've all had pests.
We've all had pests.
All right, so you want to take aphids?
Okay. Aphids are small gray green pests.
Aphids. This is how we see aphids.
Oh, hello.
Okay,
Suzanne? Ken,
okay, I think it's
is that
better.
okay?
Mhm.
Okay, so they're small green pests that suck the life right out of the plant. And they leave a sticky honeydew that attracts ant and city mold. So the ants actually will protect the aphids and farm them because they love the honeydew that they produce. So then you have two pests. So you can pinch the leaf off and throw away the diseased part, the part that has aphids. You can take it outside and squirt it with the hose, and the aphids will all fly off. Or treat with neem oil. Aphids are a seasonal thing. They're there in the spring and fall.
Yeah,
So,
they seem to
they're-
love the heat.
Yeah, they're not there permanently, so don't freak out if you have aphids. They'll be gone eventually. Okay.
Okay, white flies. White flies, when they're on your plant, they excrete honeydew. And by the way, these a lot of these wonderful magnified pictures are from UCANR, University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources. So we're excited to show them to you. So when we go through training, we get to look at all of these through these huge microscopes. It's very fun. All right, white flies excrete honeydew, which also attract ants. How you can tell is the damage causes the leaves to turn yellow and drop. In the morning, you can spray with a dilution of 1 tablespoon of dish soap to 1 gallon of water. A lot of times that's what I do. I take them outside and I will just use that combination and leave it out there a few days in the shade, and it'll help it. I don't know why this is, oh, there we go.
Mealy bugs, oh boy. Mealy bugs are those little white fuzzy things that get on your plants in the crevices of your orchids or African violets or whatever. And they, you could use a little rubbing alcohol on them. They may respond to neem oil, horticulture oil. But I have found the best thing to do for mealy is to take your plant outside and let the beneficials eat them. They totally get rid of them. I had a favorite orchid. I loved it. It got mealy. I cried. I took it outside and it was totally cleaned up. And so that's good.
And I might, one time I had mealy bugs, And it was in a windowsill in a small cactus. And, you know, it was just like inside, you know, all of the little crevices. Somebody recommended that I take a what do you call it? Q-tip and dip it in a solution of alcohol and water and do that. I'm not that patient. So what I did was I did the dilution of alcohol and water and I sprayed it, and most of them went away, but it still didn't work very good because it was so infested. So guess what? I threw the plant away, and sometimes that's just the only thing it's going to
If
do.
it's highly infested, throw it away.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, so we need to move
Oh,
faster.
okay.
Go
Brown
ahead.
soft scale.
Go ahead.
Okay, brown soft scale, you inspect stems and the top and bottom of the leaves. You wear gloves and you carefully scrape it off. Have you had brown?
Oh, yeah, I've had scale.
Okay,
Thrips, small, 1/8 inch, slender, dark colored on underside of leaves, shiny black dots. You can usually know they're there by the fecal that they leave. Leaves turn yellow and fall off. Use a forceful stream of water and insecticidal spray. They're very small, so they're very hard to detect.
and also spider mites are a huge pest. They feed on the underside of leaves. I'm sure you've seen little webs before. The leaves may dry and they might fall off. You can wash the plant thoroughly and frequently. I do that outside. And also, you know, when you spray that neem oil on it, it suffocates them.
Fungus gnats, they crawl in the soil, they lay eggs that are hidden in the soil. The fungus gnat only lasts for a day or two, but the eggs that they lay are the problem. The best way to get rid of fungus gnats, in my opinion, is to not water so much. They will go where the plant is damp. When the plant is really damp, you'll have gnats. When the plant is allowed to dry out, you will not have gnats.
And
So-
don't get them confused with fruit flies. I did that at my daughter's house. She had all of these flying things and she thought they were fruit flies, but they were fungus gnats. And you know, I basically I ended up pulling the whole plant out and replenishing the soil and leaving it outside for a while. Then they were
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
It helped. Ants. Okay, the sap sucking insects leave a sticky residue on the surface of the leaves. So you basically can clean the leaves. You can also just take the whole pot of plant and dunk it in a larger pot of water, and it might, you know, get all the ants out. All right, and let it dry. Also, you can use diatomaceous earth or boric powder, and what happens there is it's very fine. It's very finely ground, and it helps dry. It dries actually the insect out. And just be sure that you wear a mask when you're doing either boric acid or diatomaceous earth.
I put talcum powder around places where I know in my house where they're coming in. I put talcum powder and they won't cross it.
So it's interesting. They don't like it.
No.
All right, so control for insect pests, just make sure you have a weekly inspection, which is sometimes I don't do that weekly. You isolate the plant and you use the least harmful treatment first. And chemical controls, make sure you follow directions and protect yourself and use anything outdoors and wear gloves and masks if you need to use any kind of chemical. You wanna take that one?
Houseplant diseases, there's bacterial, systemic and local. Systemic and local, there's fungi, is powdery mildew, molds, root rot.
And we've talked about all of these things before, especially overwatering really causes a lot of that.
Yes, definitely.
So brown leaf tips and burn leaf margins, weak growth or light to yellow leaves, and yellowing and drooping leaves. So all of these things are signs that you've got to find some kind of treatment. It's kind of like you have to diagnose the problems.
Yes, because Dracaena, the big leafy plant, if you water it with tap water, it'll get yellow round spots. It's actually a virus from the water. So,
And so if you see, here are some of the common, the common things you can do. If you see wilting, it's either over or under watering, it's intense light or a soil pathogen. If it's not flowering at all, the light temperature is too high, or the duration of light intensity is inadequate. It's kind of like what Cindy was talking about with the light and the flowering. And soft stem bases, that means you have drainage problems or overwatering. And you can see a lot of these have to do with overwatering. We talked about that a lot. So keeping them disease and pest free, choose healthy bug-free plants. Oversee often. And I haven't overseen a lot of mine often enough this summer. We're going to talk about this plant in just 1 minute because I've been actually doing my edibles outside and there was no time to look at my houseplants. So keep water off the leaves. We talked about not watering any of your leaves. It's important for tomatoes outside, but it's also important for our indoor plants. Work with clean hands and tools, which we've talked about our tools. Remove the discard the infected leaves. If there's a pest, take it outside and isolate it. Treat pest early in the day and use least harmful method of control first. All right, houseplant maintenance.
so once you get your plant situated, you're all ready to go. Now you need to take care of it. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of people, there's a lot of things on the market to clean leaves. This is really important to keep your leaves clean. Why? Because underneath your leaf, there's what's called a stomata, which is the vehicle that the plant takes in carbon dioxide and releases oxygen and water. Very, very important. If you use mayonnaise on your plant, you're going to clog up the, people use mayonnaise on their plants. They do, to make them shiny. Or the leaf spray. You can clog up the stomatas, and we don't want to do that. You can give your plant, take it outside once in a while and give it a little shower, little plant in the sink. Wash it off, get the dirt off of it. And hairy leaves, of course, you dust. You don't water like violets or peperonias. Next slide. Keep your plant looking rejuvenated, you need to prune it. And we're going to prune this little plant here. We want to prune it, I'll hold it. We want to prune it 6 or 7 inches or 20%. So Cynthia's going to cut it at a node. A node is
Underneath, right there.
above the node, right above. Okay.
There we go.
So this plant should grow from the stem. We should get some new leaves. And Cynthia can take this plant and propagate it to make a new plant. These, I don't know if you can see these little blumps in the stem. Those are nodes. Meristemic fluid cells, are there. The growing material of the plant, and it will either grow new leaves or roots. So.
And in our next session, we're going to be talking more about propagation. And you can also see that I have in this pot, maybe 3 more plantlets that I'll be able to share with my friends. Actually, this is called the sharing plant.
Yeah.
Yes, peperomia, Chinese money plant.
So trailing plants you want to cut, and make it look nice. And as we said, we want to cut at the node. Use a trellis if necessary. I have a philodendron at home that I've had for 37 years. And I have a triangle wood trellis that I, attach it to. And if your plant's leggy, like this plant was, it needs more light. That's a good way of telling. Next slide. We like to encourage bloom, so we deadhead. So we pinch the blooms off. I like to pinch at the node, maybe an inch down at the node. So maybe I get a flower and a leaf. Want to remove withered leaves. Use a hand pruner if you're going to prune, and make sure you turn your plant. Every time you water, turn it so that it grows nice and straight, or else it'll grow toward the light, and we don't want that. Okay.
All right. So what's next? As I mentioned at the beginning, we'll be having two subsequent in this houseplant series, and the next one will go deeper into propagation and also different houseplant families. And then the last session, or the house of the houseplants group, we're going to have a question and answer session, which is really a fun thing, to get from the audience. All right, you will get a copy if you registered online. You will get a copy, a PDF copy of this, and you can see all the resources that we've included. And we want to thank the San Mateo Arboretum for our partnership that we have with you. And Cindi works here every first Sunday of the month to answer indoor and outdoor questions about your houseplants. And we want to thank everybody. There was a team of people, including Barbara Williams-Shang, who was here today with us for support, and everybody else who contributed to the information in this presentation. You can stay connected to our monthly newsletter by signing up on our website, and it's San Mateo, San Francisco Master Gardeners that I mentioned earlier. And also there's a donation page there as well. And if you have questions, we have a helpline. So this is also included in your slides. So you can call our helpline if you have an outdoor edible question, native plant question, any kind of questions you have. You can also contact either by phone or by email, and we can answer your questions.
And that's on our website also.
Website too. So anybody in the audience, or are there questions, or?
Maybe Suzanne has some questions. Does
This
anyone
Suzanne?
in the audience have a question?
Okay.
Yeah, yes, there is one question. Here, let me pull it up. Is there a good database for checking light, moisture, and size parameters for plants? Google tends to provide links to lots of personal blogs. Any suggestions?
I'm not sure what you mean. Is there a place where all this information is listed? Is that what you mean?
For light, moisture, and size parameters for different plants?
Uh-huh.
I think that the best place, I don't know of any place where you have a houseplant database with all that information. But if you can Google individual plants. I don't know if you would need, a lot of, I don't know if there's one central like housecape for natives, for instance. I don't think that there is some place like that, unless it's not research-based and it's just a gardening website or a blog. I would, and if you're going to be looking for a certain houseplant and the light, how much light it needs and all of that, I would go to several sites. To several sites, because if you're writing a blog, you're usually writing from your own experience, or so I would check a couple of sites if you're going to be going that route. You have a question?
I do. You mentioned, I think, that the soil needs to be at least 70% acidic.
Mm-hmm.
How do I check for the plants that I already have at home how acidic it is, if it's acidic enough?
Please repeat the question for the audience.
She would like to know how we can tell if our soil is acidic or not. There are some tests that you can do, home tests. Certainly a litmus paper would tell you, if you happen to have any litmus paper. But if you buy a good quality indoor planting mix, you can be assured that it's mixed correctly.
And also there's soil testers that will test your pH.
Yes.
How you test pH, and so it will tell you what's acidic and not.
And those are at the nursery?
Yeah, they're at the nursery, or they're at the big box stores, or they're online as well.
Suzanne, do you have anything else?
Where would you recommend you get a sharpener for your gardening tools?
I would go to a good nursery.
And we have a question over here.
I have a question about the water. If you were talking about the watering can,
Mhm.
how is it that you would ever get the leaf? Because I don't really have that. You're saying, how would you, you're not supposed to get the leaf?
Okay, if you have a small plant like this,
Oh, it'd be trouble. Okay.
you could get those all wet
Okay.
Right.
and.
Actually, this one, I have it in a little thing. And so I'm able to put it, you know, I
Well,
have,
you could do this.
When you're watering, I was curious about like,
And it's hard to get the water into the center of the plant when there's leaves all over. So that also assists you.
and you want to get to the center.
Yes.
Okay. And do you want it to like, I tend to water and like have it like drain like a lot.
Yeah,
Do you want
should
it-
drain.
I've also taken care of plants for people before and they want me to put like a half a cup or a quarter cup, like they seem to be super precise. Where I don't think they're getting drained, they're not looking for that. Is that
I
what
would,
that
I
means?
would do it until water runs out the holes.
Okay, can you do too much? Like, let it.
Well, then you take the tray and you pour the water tray that it's sitting in and you dump it out, and that's how I
It's not
water my
harmful.
orchids.
It's not harmful to do it that way, like to have it draining.
No,
like that,
that's
'cause I
good.
thought maybe you're losing nutrient that way if you're putting.
Well, eventually you will lose nutrients,
Okay.
but you want the water to drain through. When I water my orchids, I want the water all to drain through, and I tilt the container so that water runs out. And if there's any water, when I put it back in the plastic container, I let it sit on the counter for a while, always water at the sink. And then I just pour that water out and take my orchid bath.
sorry, there in here. Yes.
So I have a zebra plant,
Mhm.
and some of the leaves have gone brown, and where I got it from, she mentioned that perhaps the water has too much chlorine,
Mhm.
and so to leave the water out at night.
Mhm. Overnight. Mhm.
Is that something that you normally do for houseplants, or?
That's a good thing to do.
It is a good thing, so I leave the water out and then
And
Yeah.
yes, just fill it up.
The
and then
chlorine
leave
will
it out.
dissipate.
it'll just.
Yeah, yeah. Some people go as far as like, we have like a little spout that provides reverse osmosis water, but I don't go that far.
Mhm. Or bottled water.
Bottled. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, Suzanne.
A lot of our water has chloramine now, which is much more stable than chlorine.
Mhm.
And so if you, I know I have a pond and I have a neutralizer because for the chloramine,
I'd use the,
because chlorine, because it doesn't evaporate as rapidly.
right, I'd use the humic acid with it, and that will certainly help.
I also use that in a water fountain that I have in my yard. So,
Mhm.
yeah. All right.
Any other questions? Well, it certainly has been a joy talking to everybody. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. And we'll be back again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that excellent presentation. So much great information on how we can have beautiful and healthy houseplants. Don't forget, the Arboretum Society has a nursery with greenhouses with houseplants and orchids. So come and see what we have. In a few days, you will be emailed a link to a recording of the presentation and an evaluation form. Any unanswered questions can be addressed at that time. We appreciate feedback on what worked and where we can improve. Please join us for future seminars and workshops. The workshop on Sunday, October 2nd will be how to make a grapevine succulent wreath. We will supply you with a 14-inch grapevine wreath and a variety of succulents, natural materials, ribbon, and glue to create a beautiful wreath to display in your home and garden. The fee is $25 for Arboretum Society members and $35 for non-members. We are allowing a small in-person group to participate at the Arboretum with the rest on Zoom. The Zoom participants will be emailed dates and times when supplies can be picked up. Sign up on our website, sanmatoearboretum.org/classes-events. Also on October 2nd, the Master Gardeners will have their monthly plant clinic at the Arboretum Society. Come anytime between 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. They are available to answer your questions from general information to advice about specific problems. Join the Arboretum Society and receive a discount on workshops at a variety of nurseries and businesses on the peninsula and a 10% discount on all purchases at the Arboretum Society's nursery. Also, let us know if you're interested in volunteering by signing up on our website or emailing us at info@sanmataoarboretum.org or calling 650-579-0536. We will have a variety of opportunities from working in the nursery or rose garden to maintenance, community outreach, education, and much more. Thank you again to the Master Gardeners and to Kevin, our Zoom technical specialist, and to all of you for joining us today. The program is now finished.